So Dutch tax season is coming up, and generally speaking, I dread tax season, especially as an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, I am not ever receiving a tax refund. I am always going to be paying thousands of dollars out of my own account to the tax authorities. And here in the Netherlands, if you didn't know, the taxes are much higher than they are back home in the US, especially the income taxes. For example, if you make up to 75,518 euros, you have to pay 36.97% of your income, of your gross income, to the tax authorities. If you make more than 75,518 euros, you have to pay 49.5% of your gross income to the Dutch tax authorities. I'm not sure if it's on a bracket system or not. Definitely inform me in the comments so that I know how much I need to pay. That said, Dutch taxes are higher, especially than they were back home in Texas, where we didn't have a state income tax. It was just federal income tax and self-employment tax. That said, although the taxes here are higher, especially the income taxes, really, and the consumer tax, which is 21%, back home it was 8.25%, here it's 21%, which is completely astronomically insane from my perspective. Although the taxes here are much higher, I don't mind paying Dutch taxes. Now, I'm saying this now, but I'm sure that when it's time to wire that money from my account, I will definitely feel some kind of way about it. Nobody likes to give thousands of dollars away, even if they know it's contributing to something good. That said, that would also be the case if I lived in the US, because again, nobody wants to pay that kind of money. But at the very least, here in the Netherlands, paying that tax, whatever the number will be, is much less painful for a few reasons. The first of which being that I know where my money is going. You see, back home, you pay these thousands of dollars in taxes, especially as an entrepreneur, and you don't really know where the money's going. I mean, the infrastructure isn't that great. The public schooling system isn't that great. Nothing really justifies, nothing warrants those high taxes, especially in a state like California or New York, which has even worse infrastructure and worse public schooling systems than Texas does, and higher taxes on top of that. It just doesn't really make much sense. Because here in the Netherlands, although the taxes are higher than they are pretty much anywhere in the US as far as I'm aware, the roads, for example, are very nice. If you haven't seen that through some of my older videos, go and watch those videos. I showcase the roads very frequently. Maybe one of these days I'll have my girlfriend take me for a drive. She has her Dutch license, I don't. I'll have her take me for a drive so that we can sort of showcase what the roads here look like, because the roads here are so much better than the US. And it's funny because recently I was reading through some of my comments on one of my videos, and I guess in the video I had insinuated that the roads in Belgium even are much better than they are in the US. And somebody literally didn't believe me. Maybe you're watching this video. People literally didn't believe that the roads in the US could be worse than they were in Belgium. And I'm here to tell you that I don't know that there's anywhere in Europe, at least Western Europe, Western and Northern Europe, I don't know about Eastern Europe, but Western and Northern Europe, that has worse roads than the US. Especially in older places in the US. The roads are absolutely treacherous. I'm talking about constant low tire pressure warnings. Just absolutely abysmal and inexcusable, given that we still have to pay thousands of dollars in taxes. At least entrepreneurs like myself have to pay thousands of dollars in taxes. Where is this money going? Because clearly it's not going to the roads. Here, I can tell that the government, that the tax authorities, whoever's in charge of distributing the taxes, the collected taxes at least, they are putting that money toward the roads. Because I have yet to see a pothole here. I've been here for over a calendar year. It's February as I'm filming this, February 2025. I landed here in January of 2024. I have yet to see a single pothole since I got here. Not only on the roads, but on the bike lanes, which is the next area where it seems like my tax money is going to, the bike lanes. Listen, I have spent the past 13 months making videos like this, raving about how great the biking infrastructure is here, but that's still not enough. So I'm gonna do it a little bit more in this video. I need you to listen to me very closely. If you are a Dutch person watching this video and you've never been to the US, I need you to consciously take a moment to appreciate the biking infrastructure here. To literally just consciously acknowledge how great the biking infrastructure is here. Because even in other parts of Europe that I've been to London, I've been to Zurich, I've been to Valencia, and I've been to Antwerp. None of them are even close to what the Netherlands has to offer. Maybe a place like Copenhagen might be pretty similar. I've heard great things about it, but I haven't been myself. But as far as I've seen thus far, even on the internet, as far as I've seen, the Dutch biking infrastructure is on a whole different level. And that's only possible because of these high taxes that I'm sure none of us really want to pay. Even though we know it's for the better good of the Dutch society, and that we will be directly benefiting from it, especially if we ride our bicycles, which you can see I have my bicycle here. I rode my bike to this filming location via the bike lanes at that. You know that it's for the betterment of society and that you will directly benefit from it because they are actually using the money properly. You see where the money is going, literally. You see where the money is going. The biking lanes are every bit as impressive, if not more impressive, than the roads. And I know that for a lot of Americans, they don't necessarily even see biking as something that's that appealing. And I understand that. It's really cold today, very, very cold. And although you see a lot of people biking in the background of this video, it's not very pleasant to bike in these kinds of conditions. But my thing is, it's good to have the option. It's always nice to have the option to bike if you want to do that. Back home, oftentimes, you just don't really have the option, or if you do have the option, it's extremely limited. Here, the bike lanes are so extensive that I could literally go from where I'm sitting right now. I'm not going to say the exact location, but I can go from this little small town that I'm in right now to a bigger city 30 or 40 minutes away by bus, except via bike. I can ride my bike probably across the whole entire country. Maybe not only on bike lanes. I'm sure there are some areas where there is less coverage, especially out in the more rural areas. But even if I had to ride my bike on the streets with cars, the cars here seem to be much more accommodating. But that's a whole different discussion for a whole different day. I'm getting off topic. The bike lanes are so extensive and so high quality. They're wide, they're very clear. You can always see where they are. You can see where the road ends and the bike lanes begin. There's usually lines in the middle dividing both sides of the bike lane. And there are very, very few bumps and potholes and things of that nature like I would see in Valencia. If you've ever ridden your bike in Valencia before, then maybe you know what I'm talking about. But the bike lanes here are just absolutely astonishingly good. I mean, so good. And not only are the bike lanes and the roads good, but the traffic lights are good. I know this is a pretty random thing to talk about, but something that I've noticed since I've been in the Netherlands is that the traffic lights always seem to be operational. I don't think up to this point I've seen a situation where the traffic lights were non-operational on that particular day like I would see back home. Back home, it's not a daily occurrence, but it's a fairly common occurrence, maybe a monthly or bi-monthly occurrence, that somewhere along your route, the traffic lights will just not work. And it effectively turns into a four-way stop sign intersection, and all hell breaks loose. It gets very chaotic, and it's just not a pleasant place. It's not a pleasant experience when it comes to driving. But here, that just doesn't seem to happen. And I think part of that is because there are just fewer traffic lights in general, not because the country's smaller, but per capita. It seems like there are very few traffic lights and they only use them, they only place them where absolutely necessary. But aside from that, it just seems like they distribute the money in a much more efficient manner. I mean, aside from the fact that there are fewer of them, just the fact that they are putting their money, putting our money, I guess, into that kind of infrastructure obviously means that the quality will be much, much higher. The usability and the reliability will be much, much higher. So the traffic lights, I mean, the reliability of them, and not only that, but the uniformity of them has definitely been, I won't say a culture shock, but it's been something that I found very pleasant, even though I myself have not driven here in the Netherlands, and I don't know if I ever will because, well, I don't need to have a bike. But the traffic lights are definitely higher quality. They look pretty much the same everywhere you go as well. That's something else that I've noticed. Whereas back home, even within the same city, within Dallas, some of the traffic lights will look very nice and modern and new, and they'll generally work 99% of the time. And then there are other parts of town where the traffic lights are hanging on these wires, and then when the wind is blowing really hard, they move, they sway, and you can't really see if it's green or not, or the lights just stop working, and again, it turns into a four-way intersection and it's chaotic, and you just don't see that here. The general uniformity of the infrastructure here has probably been the single most impressive thing about the Netherlands. The infrastructure as a whole is just absolutely astonishing. And not only that, but our tax money goes to having a better social safety net. What do I mean by that? Well, basically, here in the Netherlands, from what I can tell, it seems like the bottom, it seems like rock bottom financially is much higher than it is back home. Because since I've been here in the Netherlands, I think I've only seen a handful of homeless people. Between 5 and 10, I can definitely count on 2 hands how many homeless people I've seen since I've been here. And again, I've been here for 13 months. You can go to LA for one day, just one day, not even one day. You could probably have a 4-hour layover at LAX. You can drive down the street from the airport and you will see more homeless people in those 4 hours than you would see in a year here in the Netherlands, because the social safety net is just so much better. So much better. And of course, the population is smaller, so we have to take that into account. But at the same time, it just seems like the Dutch tax authorities, the Dutch government, utilizes the tax income, the collected tax, much more efficiently. To my point all throughout this video, this social safety net leads to a higher standard of living for everyone. It's a higher standard of living for everyone. And some would say that this maybe borders on socialism or communism. Listen, I'm not here for a political discussion. I'm just pointing out my observations. That the average person here, the average person, so middle class person, is living better than they are back home. Now, upper class people probably live better back home than they do here. And truthfully, I don't know that I've really seen much of an upper class out here. I'm sure that there is an upper class, but at the same time, poverty just doesn't really seem to exist out here. And look, you might be behind on your bills watching this and you're like, yeah, Jordan, you're lying. You don't know poverty until you've seen the conditions back home. And really, we back home in the US probably don't know what true poverty is until we've seen conditions in some of these third world countries. So it's all relative. But in the same way that US poverty is a major step up from third world poverty, Dutch poverty is a major, major step up from American poverty. Now, aside from everything else I've mentioned about the income tax, there's also the consumer tax, which I mentioned earlier is 21%. 21% consumer tax, value-added tax, I believe they call it here, is insane. That is absolutely insane. But here's the caveat. As a matter of fact, there are 2 caveats to that. The first of which is that consumer tax is added in the price tag. So in other words, when you see the price of an item at the store, that is the price that you pay. That has been very, very pleasant because back home, especially when you start buying a lot of different things, what often happens is you think you're going to be spending, let's say, $100, but you're actually going to be spending much more than that, especially in places where the consumer tax is much higher, like Los Angeles, where it's, I think, 11.25%, something like that. You think you're going to spend $100, you're actually spending 110 or 111 and 25 cents, something along those lines. Whereas here, when you think you're going to pay $100, you're going to pay $100 because that is the price that you see. And really, that's how it should be everywhere. I don't know why back home they do it like that, because people might be under the false perception, they might grab something under the false pretense that they can afford it, when in all actuality they can't. They get to the register, their card gets declined, and then they have to put it back. It just doesn't really make much sense to me to do it that way. As far as I'm concerned, as an entrepreneur myself, I don't want to promote my products to people who I know cannot afford them. I've been down that path before, and it's not really a good path as an entrepreneur. So I don't understand why businesses back home are so intent on doing that. Here in the Netherlands, and I think it's this way in all of Europe actually, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but here in the Netherlands, they understand that. They seem to have this fundamental understanding that the price that you see should be the price that you pay. And not only that, but the second caveat is that in spite of the consumer tax being 21% here compared to 8.25% back home in Texas and 11.25% in LA, things here are still cheaper. Now this right here has me completely baffled. I do not understand why things here are so much cheaper. Of course, it correlates with the average income, the overall cost of living, but certain items, like say for example rent or housing in general, seem to be comparable in price to what you would see in the US. Whereas most other consumables, such as food, for example, are much, much cheaper, even with that 21%. So without the 21%, I mean, food would probably be next to nothing. It'd probably be closer to prices that you might see in Thailand or Spain or somewhere very, very cheap to live. So I don't really understand how that works, how things here are so much cheaper. I don't know if stores just profit less, or maybe when it comes to import-export taxes, things of that nature, that's going beyond my realm of expertise. So if that's your realm of expertise, then please inform me in the comments. But for those reasons, although it's going to hurt whenever I pay however much money I'm gonna have to pay in taxes this year to the Dutch tax authorities, whenever I get that blue envelope, although it's going to hurt, I'll know that my suffering is for a good cause.